Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Good morning, Doug. Good morning, Beth. Good morning, Amanda. Good morning, Jim.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we're still waiting on the secretary. Oh, it sounds like Courtney said that we needed to resend him a link, so he should be on momentarily.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning.
Well, for the record, Madam Director, it appears we have a full quorum. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I believe you just muted.
Okay, hopefully I'm unmuted now. All right, I'll start over. My apologies. Mr. Chairman, this meeting was publicly noticed as a special meeting for the State Loan and Investment Board. We have one item on the agenda today, and that's H1, which is to consider one application for a Chapter 3 emergency mineral royalty grant funding application. This is for the town of Wheatland. The town of Wheatland is requesting $7,570,651 in emergency MRG grant funding for the demolition and replacement of their Black Mountain water storage tank and to make improvements to the town's existing water supply wells. Their main storage tank is leaking excessive amounts. They are, in fact, under an administrative order from October 3rd of 2023 from the EPA due to the leakage issues. Mr. Chairman, the application has been broken down into two parts. The first part is the emergency demolition of the water tank and improvements to the existing water wells with an estimated cost of $1,677,000. The second part of the proposed project is the construction of a new 400,000 gallon water tank at an estimated cost of $4,573,500. The full requested amount would amount to 92% of the total project costs. They are proposing to match their $623,000 ARPA grant, which had been awarded to them for the design and engineering costs associated with the full project. We did have our sister agencies, the Department of Environmental Quality and the Water Development Office, review the application. They have embraced and recommend funding of the $1,677,000 attributable to the emergency costs. And there are some options should the board decide to go that direction for funding the remainder of the project. And Mr. Chairman, I would hand it over to Ms. Blackwell to talk about the other options to fund the remaining should the board go with the $1,677,000 in the emergency costs.
Mr. Chairman, board members, the town has several options in funding the construction of a new water tank. The first option, they have been recommended by Water Development to receive $2,685,500 through the omnibus water bill through the 2024 legislative session. That would be approximately what they say 50% of the cost for the new tank. The town also, with their submitted ARPA application for this project, identified approximately $1.5 million in town funds that they could use towards this project. However, they were not listed on the application for this emergency MRG. Furthermore, the town was also awarded another ARPA grant for $1 million for the 16th Street infrastructure project. They could request from the board a change in scope so that they could use those funds towards this project as well. Furthermore, this project is on the 2024 drinking water intended use plan. So they would be available or eligible to apply for a drinking water loan with potential of having principal forgiveness, which essentially is a grant, to help them construct this loan or this project as well. So there's several options for the town to find the funding to construct the new water tank, which staff and our partnering agencies do not feel raises to the element of an emergency.
Mr. Chairman, it was my understanding that some folks from Wheatland may be on the Zoom, but I don't see them. I would have to defer and see if Mr. Bump has them on the system here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a few attendees. I'm not sure if they're from Wheatland or not. We have a Candy Wright and a Teresa Curran.
They are from the town.
All righty.
So if they would like to address the board, now would be a good time if you could promote them, Mr. Bump.
Go ahead, Ms. Wright.
Can you guys hear us?
Can you hear us?
You put that
Mr.
you're here.
Chairman?
Yes, we can. We can hear you, Ms. Wright.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Brandon Graves.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'm Mayor Brandon Graves. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to review our application and meet with us today. We have some people here today familiar with the project. I have Councilman Allison is here. I have Representative Jeremy Harrelson. Clerk Treasurer Candy Wright is here. My wastewater superintendent operator Rick Keck is here. And then the clerk treasurer Candy Wright and myself, the mayor. At this time, I think I just introduced Representative Harrelson. He's gonna speak a little bit, and then we'll have Ray Catalier with CEPI Engineering also here for some question and answer, and maybe be able to also help shed some sight into the uphill challenge that we have with our leaking water tower.
Very good. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Governor. First off, can you guys see us or not? No. Okay.
We cannot see you, but we can hear you.
Okay. Well, if you guys are okay with it, we're going to move forward just on audio then.
Great.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys so much for being willing to have this conversation today and have this meeting. Been about a month ago when Mr. Governor, you and I had the conversation about our Black Mountain water tower and how this has gone from an inconvenience to a danger, as we have a 700,000 gallon water tank with the potential for failure, and we move forward with this grant application. As we did talk about kind of what we have in front of us, I think that time is of the essence. Ultimately, our goal is to drain this said tank and to get ourselves onto a variable vane booster pumps on our wells. If we can do that, we eliminate the immediate danger of a saturated based water tower with a failure possibility because of this riveted design. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ray, and he's going to explain a little bit about the project and kind of what the scope and sequence of that project would look like. And then after he gets done, I will come back into the conversation and kind of talk a little bit about the funding ideas and options that obviously you guys have in front of you, and just kind of some of the ideas that we were thinking as we were looking at the bottom line and what it would take to make this tower replaceable financially. So with that, Ray.
Thank you, Representative Harrelson. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Ray Catalier. I am the project manager with CEPI. We've been working with the town of Wheatland on their water system in general and this tank in particular for a number of years. And to give, in respect of your time, but to give you a brief overview, I just step back and give you an idea of where this came from and where it has headed in the years since. The town pursued a WWDC study in approximately 2019 to evaluate their entire water system and then also to evaluate the leaky tank. we took that project over and have been working with the town since then. And this tank had been leaking for years before we came on board. And even when we came on board, it was a leak, but not an emergency situation. Through the course of the study, honestly, the leaking tower wasn't the biggest priority that we saw for the town. We saw that a few other projects that needed some funding, probably a little more emergent than the tank did. But since that time, the leakage in the tank has increased. I would say this year, probably 50%. Month over month from August to September, we just estimate a 20% increase in the leakage from the tank. So it has gone from the point from being a nuisance to an actual emergency where the tank could suffer a catastrophic failure. So when we realized the emergent nature of the tank, we started looking at other options because our funding wouldn't allow us to take the tank entirely offline. Just the way the water system is set up, there's no easy or convenient way to do that. So at that point, we determined an emergency tank demolition project that would be part of the tank replacement project. So it was not part of our original WWDC grant request. It's in addition to, and that's that $1.67 million that you see in front of you today. That portion, that $1.67 million does not include any of the design fees or any of the services during construction, which totals another $340,000. But what this emergency tank demolition project would do would be able to enable the town to float, as it's called, off the wells temporarily while the existing tank is demolished and a new tank is erected. So we're looking at anywhere from 1.5 to 2 years of the pumps alone providing pressure rather than pumping up to a higher elevated tank that would then allow the water to distribute through the system. So that is the technical background. One more thing I would like to add is that there are a few unknowns with these wells, and that's part of this project, is going through and evaluating each of the 3 wells that serve this portion of the water system. And that's going to ultimately be the deciding factor on how much pressure they can handle as far as operating 24/7, providing water to the residents of the town. And with that, I think I'll turn it, if there are no questions, I'll turn it back over to Representative Haroldson.
Let me just ask, are there any questions? Any questions? Hearing none. Representative.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So as we, obviously the ask with the grant was to fund 90% of this project. And the recommendation is to come in at 1.667 million. But as we've kind of been going through the numbers and looking at it, a couple things just to kind of shed some light on the $1 million ARPA grant that was granted for the 16th Street project. As none of that money has yet been pulled, but the work has started. So those funds are already being spent, and the request for payout will be coming from the town. So in theory, that money is there, but in reality, it's already being spent for the project that it was originally allotted for. And so I think that money kind of has to come off the table. The unfunded portion of it, obviously, we've got the omnibus water bill that us as the legislature will look at, and that is an option where we can fund that 2.6855 million. But with that, there's still a 3.218 million unfunded balance, some of which the town could work at trying to fund. But the reality is what I don't want to see happen is that we, through lack of funding, hold back the opportunity to get this new tower put into place. And so the reality is, if we were to take out the omnibus water bill funding option and take that off the table, with the unfunded balance in that, we come out to almost $6.3 million. And if you were to add in the towns, I mean, we could go a little below that, but I would ask today that though we've had a recommended 1.667, I would ask that we would come in more at that 6.3 mark, which gives the ability for the town to move forward in the fastest way possible to make this tower a reality. Obviously, anything unspent would be reverted. We understand that, but this would give us the ability, with the unknowns that this could potentially pose with our well systems, not knowing if they can handle the flow we need, those types of things. There's a lot of unknown potentials that we could be facing, and that would give us the financial means to make sure that the unknowns would be covered and that we could move forward with not only demolition, but also the reconstruction of the new tower, which would offer our community safe drinking water for many years into the future. And so the ask today would be a reconsideration of sliding that back up to the 6.3 million mark, and that would give us the ability to continue on this project in a timely manner. And a year from now, we won't have to have this conversation because we got a new tower in the air.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you just give a little bit of information of how the prior ARPA funding for the design fees fits into that? Because I think I had heard that the number does not include that, but just to give an idea, that extra 3.2 unfunded balance, does that factor in to that as well?
Madam Superintendent, this is Ray Catalier. The previous ARPA funds, $667,000 roughly, that was the engineering and the design fees for the replacement of the original project, which was just a tank replacement project. The new project includes it. It's a little bit difficult to explain how it has changed, but because we can't just build a new tank next to the existing tank and put the new tank online and then demolish the tank, because we've determined that tank is a present hazard and immediate danger to the town, we created a additional project which would improve the wells around the area to the point that they could supply the water to the system without a tank temporarily, so that we could then demolish the tank and then move into the WWDC funded 400,000 gallon tank replacement project. So that those original 600 and some odd $1,000 are the design fees for that replacement tank project and not for the emergency tank demolition project. And I know that is horribly confusing. So if you have questions, please let me know and I can try to clarify.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up.
Absolutely, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on that. So then is it safe to assume that $660 odd is factored into that unfunded balance, however, because that the total balance being requested includes the new tank as well as the demolition? Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Superintendent, the $667,000 is factored into the funded amount. So in the unfunded, it is not included in that unfunded dollar amount.
Thank you. Further questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just want to have a better idea of the timeline on this. And it sounds like we're getting and I guess I want a clear understanding from staff. I thought I heard that they no longer want to have this funded because of there's alternative funding through essentially a non-recourse loan with the revolving drinking funds. Did I misunderstand that? I guess clarification with the staff about what their actual recommendation is.
Ms. Blackwell.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Mr. Treasurer. you heard me correctly. There is an option for the town to apply for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Program with the potential of principal forgiveness. Currently that program, has an influx of funding through the IIJA. And we, currently have available principal forgiveness. Currently, the next due date is February 7th to go to the June meeting. However, if the board instructed us to waive the due date, we could work with them and hopefully get them in front of the board no later than April to get that funding in place. I think getting it to you by February 1st may be a lofty lift, but we can definitely try. The other options, one thing that I wanted to point out during this conversation is the fact that they have quite a low rate for their water users. Currently, their rate is $33 for the first 10,000 gallons of water. If I'm remembering correctly from their ARPA application, their rate last summer was $20 for the first 10,000 gallons, and that rate had been in place since 2011. So in order to qualify for a drinking water loan, they may have to raise their rates again to afford a loan. However, I think that we would be willing to work with them to get it done. The other options that they have, like I said, is the Water Development Fund. The other thing the town could potentially do is put in an application by the due date for the regular MRG meeting to be considered in June. That due date is February 15th, and then they would compete against all the other applications for a regular MRG grant. One of the things that we consider as a staff when we make our recommendations is how much funding is remaining in the pot to be awarded for future emergencies going forward. If the board were to award the $6.3 million, that leaves just $3.4 million remaining in that pot of money for future emergencies and for that June meeting where we fund like projects like building a new water tank. So just food for thought, and hopefully that answers your question, Mr. Treasurer.
Okay, I guess a follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
So you're not recommending that we don't fund the 1.3 million for the variable frequency drives, are you?
No, sir. What we're recommending is the funding for the emergency fix. So looking at the wells, demoing the old water tank. These other funding sources are for the construction of the new water tank.
And Mr. Chairman, I think I've got a question for the engineer. But the question would be, as far as timing, what I thought I heard you say is that you're going to first get the variable frequency drives online and get that system working before you do any demolition at all on the tank. And so you really, I'm trying to find out why you need the whole $6 million now if you're going to have a time period where you have to get the VFD drives going. So what is that time period? Is that going to be less than 3 months?
Mr. Chairman, Treasurer Meyer, we expect that with the grant funding, hopefully we receive today, we would hit the ground running as early as this week. We have some well specialists lined up to start testing these wells. We've been in contact with electrical engineers and suppliers to get the correct VFDs, the variable frequency drives, put in place, barring any issues that we see with the well testing. So we anticipate getting the new wells, so to speak, online here within the next month or two. And then as soon as we have that system tested to the water system operator's liking, we will drain the existing tank and have that demolished The intent behind that would be to get that tank off the ground as soon as possible, just to remove that hazard. So I think that 3-month time frame to get the tank demolished, that is our goal, sir. There's a lot of dominoes that need to drop to ensure that happens, but that's what we're working towards.
Yeah, what water development funds would be available when? And I guess if we're going to use this alternative funding as water development and the revolving fund loan, that their first meeting, is it in April, or is it June, or when is it? For anybody that knows, I guess.
Mr. Treasurer, I am not certain. Those funds would have to go from the water development. Those funds would have to go through the legislative process, and so that's what, March 12th. And I think it could be made effective immediately. That certainly makes sense to me. When their first meeting is, I do not know.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for staff. Just if you can provide us, I know we've discussed this before, but one of my worries in funding this full amount is that it, effectively, really depletes our MRG funds in case there's another emergency somewhere across the state. Can you remind us, timeline for what that would do to the balance if we were to fully fund this, and then how often or likelihood of legislature replenishing the MRG fund? I know that it has been cut quite drastically.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Superintendent, if we were to fund the full 7.5 request, what would be remaining from the pot would be approximately $2.1 million. If we fund the requested $6.3 million, the decreased request, we would have approximately $3.4 million for any emergencies and for that last meeting. However, if the board funds the 1.7 request, or even if you round that up to $2 million, we would have $7.7 million remaining, which in the past, prior to your tenure on the board, a lot of years at a regular meeting, we gave around $4 to $5 million. So we're able to fund 20+ projects generally with that amount of money, trying to spread it.
But
So
that's not till June.
that meeting is not till June, but we also have 4 meetings before that meeting.
And Madam Superintendent, I would follow that by mentioning last year there were several legislators who did not want to fund the MRG program. And that always is a contention. It's been reduced pretty significantly. And my concern always remains with that emergency aspect. We just don't know what we can expect. Last year we had Rollins, we've had Claremont, we've had Opal. I mean, these are significant. And I would make the other comment that one of the worries I have with the emergency program is it's a way for communities, and I don't mean this in any way connected to this, but it's a way that people can jump the line and not have full consideration of the board. If they can make the case that it's an emergency, then they don't get the full review that along with peer applications. So.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, just one additional follow-up, if I may.
Please.
So just so I understand correctly, so in June, will prior recipients of MRG be able to come back to the board and request money that's left over in that pot? Looks like yes. Okay, perfect.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Secretary.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When they were laying out the different options moving forward to fund what has been labeled the non-emergent balance by the office, one of the options they said was to go before the Water Development Commission, but then they mentioned the board waiving a deadline on February 1st, and I believe they were referring to this board, and that is a little bit perplexing to me. Can Ms. Blackwell or Director Scoggin repeat what was meant by that on the IIJA funds in terms of waiving this deadline? How does that interact with the State Loan and Investment Board?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, what I was mentioning was something similar to what the board did in December for this application. You instructed us to accept this application and to bring it forward to you for consideration as soon as possible. So within the drinking water SRF program, the rules require applications to be submitted 120 days prior to the Slib meeting that they are to be reviewed and considered at. So what I was suggesting is that you waive that 120 days and allow us to work with the entity to bring a loan application to you as soon as possible, which would either be February 1st, which I think is a really lofty goal for us, but it most likely would be your April meeting, so that gives them 3 months ahead of, or 2 months ahead of the June meeting to get going. So we're not delaying the award of loan funds.
Okay, thank you.
So for the engineer, Mr. Catalier, a quick question to you. Does that timeline, and I guess I think there might be some advantages to that particular timeline in the sense that right now you have a pretty good sense of what all of this is going to take, but if my experience doing projects, which is not like yours, there's always unforeseen things that come up. Do you think there would be an advantage to being able to work with the staff? And if there are more aspects of this project that show up, you have saturated ground, that sort of thing. Is that a valuable thing to bear in mind for Mr. Catalier?
Mr. Chairman, I think that any avenue that we can take to get additional funding to help move this project forward, that we're going to look at very, very hard between myself and the town. Waiving the application timeline, I think that would be a tremendous help. But as Ms. Blackwell mentioned, February 1st is fast approaching. I don't know. I don't see any fear or trepidation in Candy's eyes just yet. But when we actually start digging into that application, I think it might become a little bit daunting.
Very good. Thank you. Further questions?
Mr. Chairman, I do want to put Candy's mind at ease and the engineer's mind at ease. The ARPA application that they completed last year is very similar to our SRF application. There's a few more things, but the information that you put in is very similar. So hopefully you have the majority of this information and it may be a cut and paste situation.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
I'm wondering, do we need a multiple piece motion, or do we just look at a motion where we would put the 1.677 million together with the extensions that are necessary, or do the extensions that are necessary in a separate motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Let me just ask if there's a response from Director Scoggin or Ms. Blackwell or Mr. Peters.
Mr. Chairman, we would just need a motion to approve the board matter and the amount that the board would like to approve it. And then similar to December, just give us instructions as to how you want us to proceed with the SRF application.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Director, does that clarify that for you?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And to the town, I think that was Mr. Cavalier, is that correct, or was that the mayor?
Mr. Chairman, that was actually Representative Haroldson. First of all, thank you guys for working with us. I know you guys are doing a lot to make this happen, and we truly appreciate that. The structure of this bill, so we would actually be building the new tank on a different pad and site than the old tank for the fact that we are concerned about saturated ground. It isn't a question of if it's saturated. The reality is it is saturated. And so they're building on a completely different site for this new tower. And so that lends us to be able to move forward. Well, next to it.
Right.
I thought we were building six location.
Okay, but it's on a different pad, right? Correct. Different pad, same location. But anyways, we can be building the new tower while demoing the old tower, and it's kind of a process that moves through. And so obviously the appetite of the board is not the 6.3, and I understand that. The unfunded balance of the 3.2 though, if we could get that, we really, I mean, we would still have to pursue other avenues to work with the legislature and stuff, and we'll do our due diligence. But the 3.2 will get us to a point where we're not waiting for funding to move forward with those beginning stages. And so I obviously understand that the 6.3 is too much of an ask. We do not want to deplete this and put you guys into a place where you can't fund other projects that need to be funded. But the 3.2 would give us the ability to not be sitting on our hands at any point in this process, at least at the beginning. And we will have to do our due diligence and continue to work to fund the rest and make sure everything else falls in line on the rest. But would just again ask if you would consider that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would speak. This is Mayor Graves. If you would accept my comments, I would speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Please proceed, Mayor.
You know, again, thank you for your time and your consideration. But I'd like to, I guess I would be remiss if I didn't mention perception is a powerful thing. And the Cowboy State Daily has put an article out recently, I'm sure you're all aware of, about this situation. And the constituents or the townspeople, there's a lot of concern. And so I did some digging and looked at the history, and a perspective is a very powerful thing. And when that tower was originally built and designed, you have to realize the questions that I get as mayor or my council members get, or the town hall ladies deal with on a daily basis after that article came out is, but the harsh reality is the design of that tower and the storage capacity with fire suppression and fire life safety numbers was built in 2001. And since then, there are 40 to 45 new twin homes that are serviced by that tower. There is a new 3-grade middle school that is serviced by that tower. There is a 200-bed legacy home, nursing home, assisted living center, and a new church that have all been brought online that are serviced by that tower that were never part of the original plan and design. And so I know we're talking about emergency funds, and perception is a powerful thing. So from my perspective as mayor of this town, the emergency level is probably a lot higher than what you might realize, because of there are other factors as well, but the interstate also transects kind of one side of town to the other, which complicates our operators' ability to have looping and meet water demands. If we go to just the pumps without water storage, if one of those wells should go down, we're in a real crisis for fire life safety aspect because of the increased demand on what was a system designed to handle that side of the interstate. And I'm not going to bore you with any more details or just keep humdrumming, but just also before your consideration, maybe that was a point that needed to be brought to the front as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. All right, further comments, questions? If not.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a question for staff is, are any of these, the other funding that we're looking at, can any of that be used to reimburse the draw on the mineral royalty grant balance and operate more like a bridge loan than a grant, or is that possible?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Treasurer, I believe we cannot award a loan contingent on it being paid back. I think we discussed this when we talked about, was it Wheatland's vac truck? It's just not an option with awarding a grant.
Yeah.
However, with our funds, one thing that is reimbursable prior to grant award or loan award are costs related to design and engineering expenses. So if the town started working on additional design work, they put in for a regular MRG to fund the construction of the tank, we could go back and fund some of those expenses. Also with our SRF funds, we can reimburse those expenses as well as expenses related to their environmental review.
I thought we already had ARPA funds for the design, so can you wash those around again or not?
If the town would like to change the ultimate purpose of those design funds, they'd have to ask the board for a change in scope. So if they would like to use that $623,000 that was awarded for the design of just the water tank, they would be able to come to the board and request those design funds to be used towards the emergency part of this project that wasn't contemplated in their original ARPA application.
Very good. Further comments, questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Madam Auditor.
I would move approval of the director's recommendation and further move that we direct staff to waive the deadline for the loan for a meeting coming up, be it February or April.
Okay, that motion's been made by the auditor. Is there support for the motion?
Second.
It's been seconded by Superintendent Dagenfelder. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Madam Auditor.
I just want to note, and I really appreciate the mayor's comments, and I don't disagree with anything he said. As we know, and you mentioned this, the legislature has absolutely obliterated these funds in the last 4 years. And for the last 18 months of the biennium, we have been applying this very strict but highly unfun level of emergency because we have had many projects like this come before us where we have had to say no to the non-emergent pieces. And it is only because we have held that very difficult line that we have money left at this point. We are 75% of the way through the biennium, which is good, but we still have 6 months where a lot of stuff could go wrong. And I wish we had more. I wish we could fund the whole project, but I'm so glad that we have, really towed that line on all the previous requests so that we can at least get started here. So that's why I made the motion that I did, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. Further discussion? Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye or a thumbs up on the screen.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that sums up that. Secretary Gray?
Yeah, aye.
Aye, okay, that motion carries. Thank you, and for the town, I couldn't have said it better than the auditor did, but really do appreciate the circumstance.
Thank you guys so much for what you're doing and truly appreciate your partnership with us and we'll, like I said, we'll continue to do our due diligence to make sure we move forward and get those applications in to finish funding through the other avenues and means.
Thank you very much. Madam Director.
Mr. Chairman, we are committed to helping the town of Wheatland, so we stand ready to help with applications, whatever they need to get this in front of the board, the drinking water loan in front of the board as soon as possible.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question on that.
Yes, is that Representative Harrelson?
No, this is Chuck.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I really think, what's the plan for us to get this before the board February 1st? I mean, can we get moving on this afternoon, today? Because we really need to get this before the board.
Mr. Secretary, I think you have the commitment of the staff to work with the town of Wheatland as quickly as possible.
Mr. Chair.
I really think we should try to get this on February 1st rather than April.
Mr. Chairman, we will do our best to meet that deadline.
Thank you.
Madam Director, is there anything more to come before the board?
Chairman, that concludes the agenda items for the special Slib meeting today.
Move we adjourn.
It's been moved by the treasurer to adjourn. Is there support for that?
Second.
It's been seconded by the superintendent. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That sounds unanimous. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Bye.